different back in the day and how they're changing, and yeah. So we're gonna start with the first era of GIIP/Everett, known as the beginning and original GIIPers. So yeah, we're gonna start with Mary Jane, who's gonna start the talk.
Woo, Mary Jane!
Currently, please, for those of you that were around, help put me in my place. First off, I just want to say how special it is to be here 20 years and to see how much the program has grown and to see it thriving. It's very exciting to see just the amount of students who are participating and to see the program become not just as the diversity of the program. So it really touches me to see, of course, more women and people of color participating in this, and especially our women of color who are sort of taking the reins, not only in sort of being at the forefront of these important issues, but being proximate to them, and also, taking on the challenge of technology and being able to figure out ways that we can capitalize on that. So it's truly inspiring. So I want to thank both Katie and Chris for inviting us here to share in this special moment in this celebration and to be alongside all of the active students and active fellows right now. So thank you for that. A little bit of amnesia lane here. Okay, so I actually wasn't there at the conception of GIIP. That was really, I believe, a special moment between Brandon Wright and Kyle Eischen. From what I was told when I came in the fall of 1999, they had just spent the summer doing a technology retreat institute for students from East LA, and they had come up here and shared, and they were doing some technology programs with them. And we had actually, in the fall, had just sent out, and throughout that first year that I was engaged in it, we were beginning to have some interns who had been off traveling around the world doing technology projects. Or not, at the beginning of GIIP, there was no class. There was just sort of a ragtag bunch of us, been conscripted by Paul Lubeck to be his research assistants. Yes, the opportunity of glamour and fame, and then we realized it was a lot of our first office was actually at Merrill College, and it was right next to, I think, because Manuel Pastor was one of the people who was sort of sponsoring that, right? So he's gone on to be a pretty big name in social justice work. And I remember Brandon, when I first came on as an RA and I was getting an orientation, I ran into Brandon, and we had actually gone to middle school together in Fresno, but we hadn't gone to high school, so that was kind of an interesting, cool Fresno connection. And he was like, yeah, sometimes you get locked out of the building, and so what I do is I'll show you how to break in through the window so we can climb in and get our work done. And so that was a special memory of our Merrill College offices. Luckily, we didn't have to be there too long, and Paul, through his genius of sort of working the bureaucracy, managed to get us a little bit of tiny office space deep in the basement of College 8, which is now Rachel Carson College, I believe. And so that's sort of when the offices of GIIP really came to fruition. And I remember one of the first conversations we had, it was a group of 5 or 6 of us. Some of us were research assistants, some of us were just friends of us who were just kind of getting involved in this and trying to figure out what it might look like to do some interesting work. Post Soch 15, which was Paul's, this is a very famous Paul Lubeck course of sort of I think it was called World Society, but it was the history of colonialism and imperialism and sort of the destabilization of indigenous peoples, right? Over the course of many centuries, shoved into these two-hour lectures. So it was the depressing state of the world by fire hose. And so we were all sort of reeling from this, processing this. He had stunned us into taking these, research assistant roles. And we had dinner one night at Kyle Eichen's house. And Kyle was a TA graduate assistant for working for Paul at the time. And I think he's gone on to become a dean or something very important. Also a Fresno native, by the way. And we were sitting around having, I had these like very formative ones, and we were sitting around, I remember we were eating Indian food, and we were just talking about like, what might it look like for students who want to get more engaged in something, like what might that look like? And we were also talking, this was 1999, so this was like the middle of the first .com boom. And so for those of you who weren't around, this was like, I mean, the Google had just come out, right? So like that had just come out. We used something called like Alta Vista or like Yahoo search. I remember Dogpile came on, that was like the first meta search engine, right? So like stuff was like all really new. And we were just talking about like, hey, there's this like technology thing that's happening like just right over this hill. We know it's important. We've been playing around with kind of computers trying to figure out like, what does this all mean? And here we are like ready to be these social science majors. And I knew personally, if I went home to my dad, who is an engineer, and my parents who were immigrants, and came home and said, yeah, I just spent this super expensive education and got like a social science degree, I knew the man might whoop my ass. Right? So there was this sense of like wanting to make sure that we had like these practical skills too, right? And design some of these systems and institutions that we're having. And what might it look like to harness these new information technologies that we were hearing about and actually use that in service to the social justice work that we were really deeply committed to and that we were learning about in our social science education. How it began, and we realized at that point is, okay, well that was it. That was the beginning. So the really digest version is we knew that we needed to do this. We needed to learn tech skills ourselves. We needed to find other people who and then we started the 2-unit course. It was actually a 2-unit course when of course, we had our professor of record. It was all legit, but we sort of had to piece together that curriculum on our own, and so we spent a lot of time just kind of fumbling and failing forward in sort of that, so that we were able to kind of function as a cohesive team, and through that level of responsibility as those grew, that's when we sort of started to think about the fellow program, right? Because we knew some people were willing to take on more work and have more commitment, and we wanted a really cheap way to recognize and honor that, but also tap them into creating a more democratized, decision-making structure. And so that was a lot of it. So like in exchange for commitment, right, there was the ability to be a part of decision-making structure. So that was a really important structure that we had from that, and allowed us to sort of grow and evolve the sophistication of our projects, the different types of places that we reflect on those experiences, and eventually transition into a 3-unit course. And then luckily we were able to graduate and feel good about leading the program in the hands of some really amazing next generation GIIPers. The mic over to those folks next.
Woo!
Thank you, Megan. Awesome. That's great. So that's what, to give you a sense what Everett GIIP was like in the years 1998 to 2002, roughly. So now going to the next era known as the next generation. We're talking years 2003 to around 2006. And the speakers who are going to come up are going to be Hanami, Rehan, Shelley, and Eric.
Hi guys. So Rehan and I were coordinaters together, and so we kind of took what Mary Jane and Brandon started, and we were trying to kind of keep it going. The $300,000 grant that we were like, okay, well maybe we could start doing something with this. The Compton grant. So there was a lot of pressure to kind of just like, kind of choose to fill, I have to say.
And spend money.
Yeah,
and
do stuff, right. So the office got moved to those windows right there, the second windows up in the middle. We had a nice little couch there. In 2004, so we all got, it was a big deal.
I think we were still using instant messenger, is that what it's called?
Yeah. AIM, yeah. But then we started using GChat, so like we were like, okay, let's like, that was like Slack, but back then. How the transition was, bringing us to that stuff?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, I did Soch 15, so World Societies with Paul, and it fucked my head up, as it usually does. Also, I got an A-, which was one of the hardest A- I ever got in that, and Hanami did as well. It was a difficult course. The first time I talked to Paul, I was reminiscing. I had been taking it, and this was when the free trade era of the Americas was going on and trying to be renegotiated. So there was a big protest down in Miami. So the first time I ever talked to Paul, I approached him to ask him if I could make up my midterm so I could go to this protest because I felt like I had to do it. So he said yes, and from there, then I had to talk to the whole class when I got back, and then I got approached to join GIIP, and kind of that's how I got funneled into it. Brought these guys in I didn't have to do much work. It was a cool program that spoke for itself. But the biggest thing that I took away from it was learning how to break down my fear of technology, and that if things are going crazy, I can just unplug it real fast and it'll be fine. So from that, I really remember too, starting the time period we were there and so it was the first time that I think content management systems came across, and that was a really exciting moment where it really was democratizing web development and web design. And it was really easy for us to spin up websites for our clients and for our partners, which was really exciting. And I think, we've always been at the forefront of that and being able to figure out how to use pieces of technology for that. And it was awesome. That's what I got.
I think we also, during that time, really tried to hone in the Fellows Program.
Yes.
Yep. And tried to highlight we created Fellows profiles, which were like fancy Word docs, I think. Some, not Dreamweaver, some Photoshop skills.
Yeah, I think InDesign.
You mentioned
InDesign.
Yeah.
CS2. And the Jeep logo. So I had back then already been like, we need a logo. Started really bugging Paul about it. We got Lisa, who was actually, an actual graphic designer, and got her really working on it. And so we had I remember 100 different color schemes and different versions of the intricate circles. And so I designed our first newsletter. And first business cards that we had, little business cards with this fresh new logo. And I remember Eric and I were here for that summer, and Shelley and Rehan went to Nigeria. And do you want to?
We made a banner.
Yes, we also made a banner. I think it's in the back in the kitchen of the current office now. But do you guys want to talk about your time in Nigeria?
Before that, I just want to go back to the beginning, if that's okay.
Sure.
So when we came into Eric's the one who brought us in. A lot of people actually, I think, into the program through Paul's class. And when we came in, we didn't have.
It is a cult. I know. I drank the Kool-Aid. Exactly.
We didn't have the same struggle that Mary Jane and Brandon did and the others bootstrapping the program. When we came in, it was this era of we just got some money. We got $300,000, which when you're an undergrad, it's that's $300 million. You couldn't spend it fast enough. So there's all this money. There's this program. The class, the 2-unit class was just packed. I remember standing room only first day. Everyone wanted a piece of this program. And there was this issue with how do you scale it up, right? How do you set up the infrastructure to take all of these hungry minds who want to go change the world, but they don't know how, and you've got the skills to do that. So we had to scale up the program. And that's how I got brought in as a tech coordinator. And really, I think that was the key point in my life, and maybe you guys will share this sentiment, that success is really standing on the shoulders of giants. And so Mary Jane and Brandon, you guys set up something pretty cool there. It allowed us to take things really to the next level. And then, we did a bunch of projects, some on campus, some in the community, and then some internationally. And so Shelley and I had the fortunate chance to go to Nigeria together. Out the window, everything you planned for, everything you scheduled, you thought was going to happen, nothing happens the way you thought it would. So at the end of the day, it's all about just preparing for chaos and being okay, getting out of your comfort zone, especially in a place where you don't speak the language, you don't have any money, you have American money, but the local money. So.
I think Paul had obviously spent a lot of time in Nigeria, and so I think Rehan and I were working on very different things, and I think the lesson that, it doesn't think there's a lot of structure in some of the programs now, but I think the biggest lesson that you always taught, Paul, and that I think is good that we all keep in mind is just to kind of go and shut up and just go and listen. And that was always the message I got from GIIP, that we can all have ideas, but really it's about being present and connecting and creating those connections that then allow for this beautiful work. And so yeah, I showed up to Nigeria and I think everything changed. The person I was supposed to be working with was, had to deal with a sick, ill family member, and that turned into this other kind of project. So I think GIIP is good about keeping you on your toes and remembering kind of where your place is, and to kind of, it's humbling. Yeah, I think those are the highlights. I think those were the years too that we really, there's a lot of people interested, but we tried to expand it beyond the social sciences. So I tried to get more of the kids from across the street on Science Hill to come over. I don't know how successful I was, but there was some science fields. Yeah.
We were doing a lot of pitches and a lot of tabling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say ultimately, like, this was the period that we established our brand as GIIP on campus. We got our logos, we got our color schemes, we got our fonts, we got our elevator pitches, we got our Gmail. We went legit and like really established who we were and how we wanted to present ourselves to the larger group. Yeah.
Thank you, generation 2003 to 2006. Okay, great. So we're going to go on to the next era, which is around 2007 to 2010, where we sort of really ramped up and started building an actual organization within this university. Some major events happened here that really set into place, our role within the education sort of system here at UCSC. So the person to talk about that will be Mai.
Into the cult because of my sister. I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, and I started GIIP for 4.5 years until I graduated in 2009. And we definitely took a lot of that momentum that was built in from the cohort before me in establishing our brand and our voice and what we were doing in establishing student governance into this project, into this program, into asserting ourselves as educators, embedding this sort of attitude of humbleness and humility as we go into different spaces and into different communities as people who are privileged to be able to go to a UC system. And I think a lot of that began to come to plateau in some ways, and I was in this transition period where we were losing that 300K. We were at the tail end of that, so we're like, oh, we need more money. And it was also, in the end of the Bush years and the rise of Obama and a lot of, potential. I think there was just a lot of sort of excitement and seeing what was happening next. And within that environment, political environment, emerged Gail Chadwin, who was one of the fellows back then. And, we were chugging along, doing really great work. We had established the UC Technology Leadership Institute and that relationship, bringing high schoolers. We had some solid programs, but we wanted to institutionalize ourselves a bit more and strengthen ourselves on this campus. And Gail emerged and said, we need to put ourselves in the student referendum and get money from the student body. And I remember the meeting where she said that. A lot of us were really incredulous, and we were like, are you sure? We're still really small. We don't think that many people know about us. Are people gonna give money to this obscure project on campus? And she's like, no, we're gonna do this. And that was sort of the spirit of it. Was like, we don't just sit around, waiting for something to happen to us to talk about solutions. We actually get shit done. And that was really just embodied in how much the fellows were coordinated to pitching in classes. We flyered, we tabled in the quarry. We did everything for just a month straight. And we won by a non-significant margin. And we got, I think it's $3.33, if anybody knows, per quarter, I believe, from student fees to go into the program. And that's helped sustain the program and pay for staff. And that's been a really core part of not just getting the fellows really invested in the brand and solidifying our brand, but also getting the student body involved and understanding what we're about. And that was really a huge success. And the second one was, alongside that, was to turn GIIP into a major and a minor. And that was a huge undertaking in every level. And I think looking back on it, it taught me so much about how we clarified the program. What does it mean to create a radical educational program that's not just about reading things and writing papers, but actually about interacting with the world and meeting people and, we messed up a lot of times, but I think putting ourselves out there to raise privileges and our cultural knowledge and our access, and obviously technology is core to that, and that aspect was embedded into the GIIPers major and minor, and we wanted to ensure that we maintain that flexibility of taking what people are really passionate about, whether that's gender equality, education, climate change, all kinds of issues, maintaining that flexibility so that people can take classes and become subject experts in those things while they are going through this rigorous program and a very clear expectations of what it means to execute a project and to do it, instead of just sort of floating around and talking about things and actually having a product that you can show for at the end. And so that was a long process, fighting with the university in a lot of ways. A major part of it was the fact that undergraduates had autonomy over the education, and that is something that it's so radical and so, I think, true to education itself. It's not just about, learning facts and spewing them out, but actually being part of the process of learning, and then, what they say is, teaching others is the best way to learn. And so I think that was embedded into the GIIPers major and minor, and just to bring it back to like that time when, that was right when Obama was elected, was sort of when I was graduating. There was just this like potential. And I think a lot of that potential came from this understanding that we did these things. Like we passed this student referendum sort of against all odds, seemingly, and also passed this major and minor to finally get recognition from the university to have this on our degree officially. And it was just huge. And obviously there was a huge amount of people that were involved in this. It was really great to be part of the history of the Everett program.
Wow, that's awesome. So as you can tell, these are sort of the years we were really, ramping up and gaining student power and, being recognized as an institution in the Everett at UCSC. And now we're going to talk about the change from GIIP to Everett, and sort of how that came about. So around the years 2011 to 2014, these big transitions, we're going to hear about that from Thomas and Aaron.
Program in the middle of the 30 series. I was a transfer student, and I was very intimidated by the course catalog description of a GIIP. I thought, no way am I going to society and global political Islam. And so I got the double dose of the Lubeck method. I came up to him to thank him for a very eye-opening experience in Social 15. And he said, join the GIIP. Like, doesn't matter that you're in the middle of it, just come into it. And so I felt like I was coming into something that was completely alien to what I thought that college was going to be, gotten to a point of development that things were really rolling along, that there were tech labs. I got to go into 2 tech labs at once and start learning about web design and also mobile apps development. That sparked everything that we started doing with the Youth Empowerment Institute. And I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody who came before us for really building up the program to something that was going to welcome someone in, and all the people that were a part of it who really adopted me and said, oh, here's a lot of stuff that you can do. We want you to help us build out the education group, the Summer Institute. So, and so I just want to tell a fun story from the Fellows Retreat. The Fellows Retreat was something that I was looking forward to since I found out that it existed. Anybody who's been a part of a Fellows Retreat knows how tiring they are, but also how much fun they are. Like, I think that was like the height of my college arrivedness. That this was just as we were getting, it was becoming solidified that we're going to get a major donation to establish an endowment to really sustainably fund GIIP, and we started to, the conversation began as, guys, we all love GIIP, we love what we've built, but if you give somebody a piece of paper with our name on it, they look at you and they say, GIIP? GIIP? What is this? Oh, GIIP. Okay, what does that mean? Global Information Internship Program. Oh, internship, so you're going to send me free labor, right? And so it was decided 5 different working groups came up with 500 different contrived acronyms, ranging from GEARS, which was like getting engaged and reactionary, to ASLAN, which I can't remember what that one was. ASLAN. Like the lion from Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. So we were kind of thinking in a bit of an outdated paradigm about naming, and so the following year, Paul came back to us and said, Dorothy Everett was the Mark Headley suggests that we name after Dorothy Everett, a truly trailblazing and amazing woman who had such an impact on his life, and here's her life story. You can watch the wonderfully produced video about her life made by Katie and Sienna. Excellent voiceover work by Sienna. And we said, yeah, let's do it. And so we entered into the long, laborious process of changing from GIIP and all the name recognition we had on campus to becoming the Everett Program. And that brief formative process, I think, brought the fellows cohort that we were in very much together. With that came the promise of a new premise. We entered into a period of transition, and we also entered into a period that I like to call kind of the interregnum, when Paul had accepted a position at the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins, and we were still in the search for our new leader. And so that left us, like me, Katie, and Haas, basically running the whole show while Paul was giving us periodic pep talks and instructional meetings, Yelminars, as I call them. Telling us, we need to recruit. And giving us directions, but more or less that we had 3 non-professors leading a bunch of non-staff in doing this crazy endeavor that we all know of. And so anyone who was part of that period was never quite clear about what the name of the place was, and they were never quite clear about who owned the place. But everybody was very clear that we wanted to actually get our hands dirty on the situations and injustices that we saw in the world, and we weren't content to wait until we were done with college or we had made our way through grad school, that we could do something right now and be leaders in it and be owners of this truly unique thing, and take that back home and completely confuse our friends and family, because no one knows, unless they came to the graduation. My parents didn't, so they don't know what it is that we do still to this day, but that's okay. And so I just want to set the stage for what Aaron's going to talk about of the kind of the search committee, that we got something that was also, I think, unprecedented. During the official search committee for a tenure track professor, we got Katie and Sonia Rios, the fellows coordinator at the time, to be sitting on the search committee, meaning that an undergraduate student is on the committee for a tenure track professor, which I've talked to professors at other universities and they say, what? You were able to get that? And that's Paul's political machinations and making sure that we were represented. So got 5 candidates. We entered into a series of Katie, in a legendary memo to social science leadership, made sure that we got all our fair share of time in having private interviews with all 5 of the finalists in the professor search. And so we convened, we made our plans about how we were going to grill these poor unfortunate souls and really hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they were going to represent us and be the leader that we needed and the leader that we deserve. So Aaron was a big part of that and did some important stuff, so I'll turn it over to you to talk about your experience during that time.
Sweet. So, people, all you guys who talked before me set us up for all of this, to this one moment where I played a tiny part in getting involved in being one of the fellow students who sat down. Me and Sarah Choquer were lucky enough to sit down and talk to all 5 candidates. The GAB had read through countless pieces of paper, countless applications from so many tenured professors to get to these 5. And a distinct thing stood out when we were interviewing these people. And the biggest thing was that a lot of these professors we were talking to didn't understand the concept of student autonomy, the importance that Everett was built on student autonomy. Brandon Wright, Mary Jane made sure we had that, and then everyone else after that built this program on student autonomy. And a lot of the professors we met were rock stars in research, or rock stars in funding, or rock stars in so many things, but they didn't have student autonomy. And we kept on interviewing, and there's one particular professor that I remember interviewing where we asked for a pitch. You say, you're in the elevator with Bill Gates, you're pitching the Everett Program to him to get funding for us. Please give us your pitch. He gives us this pitch, and I'm not trying to be blunt, I'm just really confused. I'm like, but that wasn't a pitch. Could you give us a pitch? I just didn't get it. It was more of a pitch about himself. He was talking about how he was great at research, but nothing about the students, nothing about the fellows, nothing about Nigeria, nothing about all the projects we had done. And it showed me that, like, in the search of this professor, it took so long to get these 5 candidates, and even in these 5 candidates, we need to be very careful. So in that search, we ended up finding Chris, who was tenured, who had all this experience, and understood the importance of student autonomy, understood the importance of the fellows' role in this organization and building this, and in the staff aiding these fellows to build this and get more people in. I mean, that's a small part I played in it. I'm just happy to be a part of it. And
Do you want to talk about going to the dean's office?
oh yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm scatterbrained today. So we also went to the dean's office. So once we had interviewed all 5 candidates, we had sat down at the Abbey as a group of the 5 interviewers and said, these are our top 3 picks, and this is our 1 pick that we cannot have. And we coordinated a time when you can meet with the dean of the social sciences, and all the fellows walked in, and me and Sarah said a 2-part pitch together and said, we, the fellows of this program, want this candidate to be our backup choices, but this is the person we want, and this person we definitely do not want. And there's a moment, I don't know how to describe it, a look on this dean's face where it was like, oh, these students have power, these students have autonomy. And it wasn't just us bringing this autonomy, it was autonomy from the past 20 years that I'd gone through to give us that autonomy to talk to the dean and say, this is our choice in a leader after Paul. But because of that statement, Chris was chosen as leader, as we said that's who we wanted, and here we are today, celebrating 20 years of the Everett Program.
Awesome. That's so cool. Our new executive director, Chris Benner, to talk about 2015 to 2018 and what in the past 3 years we've been doing under this new leadership, and sort of what do we look like now after all these years of student power and students, taking autonomy, and what have we been up to, and where are we going, and what are the next 20 years of Everett going to look like? So, without further ado, Chris.
So I just got to say, I have a little difficulty getting through this because I'm really emotional right now, just hearing that whole story. It's really powerful, but I'm going to do my best, and with your help, you'll help me get through. And I've heard a couple of different things mentioned about sort of who I am, executive director, leader, the Dorothy E. Everett Chair in Global Information and Social Entrepreneurship, and that's an honor every day to come in with Dorothy Everett's kind of name on my title. But I actually think Mary Jane got it right. Like, I'm the professor of record, right? I sign off on whatever the students are leading and doing, and I really feel like that's a big part of my role here, is really, cheerleader, coach, helping to try and support the leadership that really does come from the students and fellows. Hearing the stories about the early days of technology in the program made me feel very, very old. And hearing about the cult also made me think about, this was like, I don't know, people talk about a brother from another mother, or, long lost connection. It was like, this was the cult that I feel like, I was meant to be part of from, when I was born. So my early introduction to technology was 1972 and the Atari Pong game. I don't know, people don't know that. It's like a little dot going across the screen of your TV, a little, panel here, back and forth. Super excited. Anyway, there's a bunch of other stuff in the 70s, but when I was a student in college, the big issue of the day was divestment from South Africa. And we were so excited because 1984, that's dating me, I know, the Macintosh computer, the personal computer came out. People may have seen the Super Bowl ad, and we were smashing Big Brother, and all of a sudden you had the ability to produce your own media, your own newsletters, your own organizing. And so, I had a sense of the power of technology and social change as a student. When I first connected to GIIP, I was a graduate student at Berkeley, and this was 1998, 1999. I was studying technology and social change in Silicon Valley, and Paul had this great conference going on technology and Silicon Valley and social change, and I got invited down and met Kyle when he was still a graduate student and heard about this great new program that was starting off, the Global Information Internship Program, which sounded really cool. But then I went off and was at Penn State. I ended up back at UC Davis for 9 years. And when the Everett chair position opened up, Paul called me and said, Chris, you should really think about applying for this position. I think it might be a good fit for you. And I was like, I'm really happy where I am. I don't, but tell me about it a little bit. And the thing that convinced me to pay attention and this is something I should pay attention to was the referendum funds. And to know that students in the program had organized to get a majority of people on campus to self-fund was like, okay, that's a level of commitment that's worth seeing if I can come to be part of it. And I'll just say the question that Aria asked in there as we were going around and doing that speed dating is, imagine your perfect life. Like if money wasn't an object and, what would you do? And I sat there talking, and Jesse will back me up. It was like, I got it. This is the perfect place for me. I just feel tremendously honored that I was selected for that position, and deeply grateful to all of those who were part of the decision and really having that veto power. I just trying to help build it for the next 20 years as well. A couple of things in terms of kind of where we are in the last 3 years, and then much of the rest of the afternoon we'll be back inside for some of it, and then back out here after the tables get cleared up to talk a little bit about how you all can help us kind of moving forward from here. But as we were doing student-driven, program institutionalized in the university, and how hard that was, and how to come in at a point where, with the leadership of the students and Paul's tremendous work in kind of setting things up for whoever came into that position to be in a position to carry forward his legacy successfully with the funding and the relationships are there. And now we have a new dean of social sciences, which is kind of the person that I report to, who said to me in a meeting a week ago, the work that the Everett program is doing is the model we should be adopting throughout the university, and we really need to figure out how to make that happen. So, let's hear a clap for that, that the leadership process that you made has now become institutionalized and being seen as a model for the university. It's super exciting. And some of the ways that we've done that. So one of the things, when I came in, the 3-course sequence were 3 units each course, and then there was an independent study course for students writing up their practicum. We turned those courses into 5-unit courses to recognize the amount of work that students were doing as part of that. Made the first course in the fall a general ed course, so it now meets sort of the general ed requirement for technology and society. And the goal of that is to recruit across the campus more effectively. And with fellows and student leadership recruiting and the Baskin School of Engineering and Physical and Biological Sciences and Arts and Humanities and Social Sciences, and we're trying to expand that Sociology 30 course as sort of a filter course. So in the fall, just as the first step of that was the first year, it was 5 units in a general ed requirement. We had 70 students, 71 who were in the class. About 19 different majors were represented. Minority, less than 50%, super excited about that, representing all 5 divisions of the university. 77% of those students were women. 65% of those students were underrepresented, not including that, Indian and Chinese and Japanese, and if you include that, it was over 70%. And 54% of those students are first generation college students. Okay? Yeah. So it's a super exciting group that's part of that. We now have, Katie will correct me, 22 projects that are being developed. We've tried to accelerate a little bit some of the project work. And so much of the actual project work is happening now in the spring quarter at a time when the existing fellows can be there as more of a support. We have students working in teams a lot more. We have quite a number of international projects, including Nigeria again, Ghana, the Philippines, Haiti, Peru, and then, Oakland, Santa Cruz, Watsonville, San Jose, a whole variety of lives. What's that? New Orleans. That's another great project too. Yeah. And the thing that amazes me, and you all know this so well of having gone through the program, is it's been 3 years for me now, and every year I think we have such amazing fellows, and they're graduating, and like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then there's the process of recruiting and bringing in the new fellows, and then, wow, we have an incredible group of new fellows coming in and doing that. And so at the moment, we have 32, 33 fellows, overlapping cohorts in the spring quarter, and all of whom are just kind of rocking it, doing amazing work. We've added an Impactathon program. Christine, where's Christine on Joko? Hey. Executive fellow who really led that and created that from scratch last year, and Monica has carried forward that legacy today. But these are intensive 1 or 2 day sessions with select community partners where we bring students together to do a story map or produce graphic materials for a campaign that the organization is working on, or help put together a database or a survey. And it's a chance for the new students to get involved in real practical experience work in that first quarter, but then continue it on through the year. So it's a tremendously exciting new part of that. The other thing that we've done is in the practicum write-up report, you produce for that minor and major at the end, which had been an independent study course, has now literally just been approved last week as a regular 5-unit course. So it's a chance for students to be giving each other feedback as they're writing up the case study report of the projects they've implemented. And the model we have in mind is like the Harvard Business School, and Stanford does this too. When you're teaching business skills, you use case studies of real-world experience to learn how do you build and implement a project. We want to do that for social enterprise and social justice work, in which undergrads are writing the case studies that become the lessons and models for future generations, future cohorts of students coming through the program. So we're integrating that into the curriculum. My hope is that that becomes a model for educators across the country of using these case studies. And Stanford and Harvard sell those case studies. It becomes an enterprise thing. Maybe we'll get there someday. That's my goal somewhere. We've built a new faculty advisory board. So other faculty across all the departments within social sciences, and including a couple of faculty from the School of Engineering and Physical and Biological Sciences, to help. Really, it's about increasing the networks across campus, but also getting advice and feedback about how we can kind of bridge those worlds a little better. And we've tried to strengthen the work of the Global Advisory Board that Paul set up and students set up as well, including inviting in a couple new members, including Luther Jackson, if you can raise your hand there. He's officer at the Nova Workforce Investment Board in Sunnyvale. So his profession is helping people get jobs. So if anyone is looking for a job, that's your man. So thank you, Luther, for being here. I really appreciate it. And then other things that we're thinking about going forward is, I mentioned the idea of like maybe selling our case studies to other educators, and that's one of the ways we're thinking about Everett enterprises. Like, what are the ways that we can diversify our sources of funding by providing services, training, workshops, programs out there? So if you have any thoughts and ideas about how we might do that, that's one of the things we're thinking about. There's a lot of interest in campus on creating master's degree programs. And so we've had a process of thinking about a master's degree program in global technology and social innovation. That could be a 5-year bachelor's and master's degree for students at UC Santa Cruz, and also bringing in people from outside. So that's some of the new direction we're going. And then finally, I'll just say we're also really trying to build and strengthen the alumni network and relationships between. It's been tremendous to work with the board of the year and really trying to strengthen and build that, and this event is obviously part of that. And so we did some work trying to get in touch with all of you and all the others who are alumni who aren't here, and I wanted to share a little bit of the kind of data information that we got from that process. And this is Yesenia's work. Yesenia, thank you so much for helping to pull this together, and Alex, Colleen, everyone, and doing a lot of LinkedIn searches to find the people that we're not doing. So at this point, we have about 116 where we have detailed employment information at the moment. That's about a third of the total number of alumni that we have some record of. In terms of kind of the sectors of different work they're in, it's everything from technology, education, government, immigration, law, labor, health, consulting, finance, entertainment industry. About 55% are working in for-profit enterprises, businesses. Some of the prominent names there include, particularly in the tech industry, Tesla. Where's Andrew? Let's see, who else? Cisco, Rehan, where are you? I'll just run the other one. Slack, IDEO, Twitter, Amazon, Seagate, Apple, Dow Jones, pretty cool. Nonprofit sector, this was my other list I was pulling up over here. Let's see if I can pull it together. Multiple forms of technology. So just a sample of some of the nonprofit organizations: Mar Vista Family Center, Community Bridges, Community Agroecology Network, Digital Nest, Seneca Family of Agencies, Berkeley Community Fund, Oakland School for the Arts, Building Skills Partnerships, so a whole number of nonprofits, and then a bunch in the public sector. So 20% of people are working in nonprofits, and 25% are in public sector, including universities, Gavilan Community College, and a number of other community colleges. And we have the youngest city council person in Richmond's history. Ada, where is she? So you all are amazing, and you're amongst a bunch of other really amazing people, and we're really trying to figure out how to strengthen those connections between alumni and students and fellows on campus. So just to say again, thank you all for coming here today. It's an honor to be here with you. I particularly want to thank Paul for all of his work in being professor of record for a few years and helping. And you all should know, those who've studied nonprofit work know about sort of the founder's syndrome and how hard it is to transition original leader running a program, like the norm for that kind of transition. And it has been absolutely the opposite in Paul's case, that he at every step of the way has been supportive and helpful and being there as a resource and creating the conditions and the relationships that have allowed me to just step in and hope to really be able to honor his legacy and the legacy of all that helped build GIIP and the Everett Program over the last 20 years as we look ahead to the next 20 years. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That's, as you can see, it's been just years of students coming in and not really having an idea of what the hell they're doing or why they're doing it or, you know, what they want to do after college, and having this experience to take ownership of their learning sort of experience. And, you know, speaking for people, you know, it's such a privilege to even, you know, get the opportunity to learn at a university and to actually, you know, be a leader and leading other students and helping people who are coming in and who just, you know, have the same fears, and we all sort of share this empathy for feeling like, like an imposter. And just so want to say thank you so much to all of our alumni here and out there in the world doing like just the best and the most. So can we just applause for all the alumni? And so just to wrap up this session, if you all could sort of letting all the awesome stories sort of marinate in your head, think, what would you like to see in Everett's future? What do you want the next 20 years to look like? I'll let everyone think about that for a sec. You can just imagine. And turn to someone sitting next to you and share that vision. What does that look like? What do the next 20 years of Everett look like? Or just the future of Everett.
I see Everett in all kinds of universities. Like, if we get the chance to expand to, like, I don't know, like San Jose State, like Humboldt. You know? Yeah, exactly. But have like this be the motherland, you know, for Everett. Exactly, you know. Everett office. Yeah. Exactly. And it's like it's not gonna start off from scratch. It's gonna like start off from like a strong body already. So that's pretty much what I see like the next 20 years. It's Everett expanding, really taking over university education.
I mean, like Chris was saying, I guess we're kind of the framework that they're trying to look at.
Yeah.
Doing everything. That's
Pretty much.
Honestly, I didn't know this.
Professors are out of job.
Yeah. Programs like Apple.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, see all these people, I feel like they're all successful people
Right.
that they grow up. No one here looks unhappy. It's unfair.
Yeah.
Get a degree, This is honestly pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was getting like, oh my god. I was like getting a little emotional and I walked up there. Chills down the spine. So I think Paul is going to wrap it up with the reflection piece. So he's the founder along with like the students, and then we're going to go into like the strategic brainstorm, and then the whole group facilitated. like shut up and read. That was like that's all we learned is to shut up and read. It's like a higher pushing it along or managing it or whatever.
Okay. If y'all can just wrap up that thought, bring it back to.
Okay. Self-organization for the student to have a framework to like organize, sort of like create an institution, right? Like, in a way, it's like how do you do that at scale without centralizing too much power and stuff?
And what we found is that there's a lot of interesting things that every individual in that community in order for it right? Like, you just come in through their own it's like emotions, right? Love, like, things happening, you know?
Then you have to go back and forth
yeah, alignment of values, like all these things, and it's like, I mean, it's like
Which is like another.
is there parking? But I mean, if you do it right, like shift the entire then it can work. We can go, and then I can pass. Because we have, I guess, elements of accountability and the fact that we care about each other from the heart. I remember, like all these things. There were 8. And we do have different types of
when I'm in Vietnam, you guys think I'm so stupid.
Really?
Yeah, because like the Indwells a lot, and
things that's just like amazing.
I think it's big. I think foreign too. So
All right, we're gonna bring it back. I get everyone's attention. Is there any things anyone wants to shout out about what they want to see the future of Everett? Any key things? Arya.
So I was super fortunate to have an experience where I had Hanami, and the fellow alumni like mentorship thing is not super common. At least I think I'm like the only person who really had that, and it would be awesome to see that expand and have a more like structured way for maybe fellows and alumni to have more of a relationship with each other.
Awesome. More fellow alumni mentorship. Alumni. Y'all want to see in the future? What was that?
Democratize education.
Democratize education. Awesome. Yeah? Yeah?
Representing the social impact that different sectors can have, not just the
Awesome.
nonprofit,
Yeah.
grassroots organizing sector, but teaching maybe some curriculum around what government is doing, what private industry is doing, what academia, nonprofits, how those different sectors can work together to solve big social challenges.
Cool. Yeah.
And then the other one was to have more of a focus on demonstrated impact of projects, not just on what the projects are, but and not like the outputs, like we trained this many people or we created this many websites, but what was the actual impact that we had, and being able to tell those stories
More detailed impact of projects and how different sectors can work together to promote social justice. Awesome. Great. Any others? Yeah, Hannah.
Based on that, we were also talking about maybe creating or the ability to quantify qualitative change and being able to maybe even, you know, give people a grade or organizations a grade, Everett grade or something that kind of gives them a different level so that we can say, what was it you were saying? Kind of like being able to, you know, make sure that we know which ones are having that kind of impact. How much impact? How is that impact happening?
Yeah, creating a system for qualifying different impact levels. Yeah. Really? Yeah. Definitely. Diversity of majors. Super important. Totally. Anything else?
And more targeted, like alumni participation in influencing the curriculum. So folks that work in specific industries that understand like what the critical skills are in those industries for folks coming out of school that would need to get a job in that industry. Being able to come back and say, hey, if I was to hire a Everett student tomorrow, they would need to be proficient in these sorts of things, and then influencing some of the curriculum in the tech labs and things like that.
Yeah. Alumni influence on our curriculum support. Yeah. Great. Yeah, Mary Jo.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, the Everett program at its core is really like a leadership program. And that's sort of been like, that sort of just happens sort of implicitly, right? By just like in the deep end and like hoping you can play water. But I think there's an opportunity to make it explicit a little bit more what are sort of the core leadership competencies that we believe and that we can certify as like by being an Everett grad, right? That we can say like you are, you know, competent or you've mastered at least like some of your five leadership competencies to some degree or whatever. It doesn't have to be like that bureaucratic, but this idea of, you know, we know from our experiences now sort of as alumni, right? Like leadership isn't just about like being the top of the hierarchy, it's just like how you show up to a competition. And particularly in this time, you know, in some ways it's a benefit that a lot of our core institutions are being dismantled because that allows us to have this opportunity to rebuild them. And hopefully we can build them with a more sort of like human-centered design that really focuses on actually creating these plus institutions that are going to like look like this. Right? And so what are the leadership qualities that we're going to need when that's specific? Whether that's sort of like a helping trusted authority, right? Some other kinds of like competencies that we believe. So I think it's like trying to transition to make that just a little bit more explicit without making it, you know, sort of exclusive, but helping, particularly for first generation and students of color who are going to have opportunities to step into various leadership roles or are going to be part of creating new cultures within their corporations or their jobs or their families or their communities or neighborhoods. Those are, I think, things that we can really continue to provide value that will outlive all of this.
Sounds good. Great. Well, core competencies for leadership. That sounds great. We are all, everyone here is going to get a chance to what we're going to be doing in the next 20 years and specifically focusing on next year. We're going to take a quick break, around 10 minutes, you know, get some water, do what you got to do, and we were all going to meet in the Everett office at 3 o'clock. Sound good? Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our speakers. Woo!